All right, there we are. Hello, my name is Colin, and welcome to episode 7 of Roll by Roll's Tavern Talk, a show where we, the Roll by Roll gang, discuss various aspects of running a great D&D campaign based on our experiences with D&D 5e and our current adventures in Emathan Homebrew campaign. So joining me tonight is the rest of the Roll by Roll crew. We have Barry, who plays Nightingale and Landis.
Hey, everybody.
And we have Egan, who plays Douglin and Lafferty.
Hello.
So let's get right into the topic with a little setup to start. So in our homebrew campaign adventures in Emathan, we've added quite a few homebrewed game elements that were created or borrowed to build on the story that we're telling, not just for the sake of creating them. So tonight we thought we would discuss some of the elements that we've created and how they contribute to the story. We hope our ideas will give you some inspiration to build similar story building game elements for your campaign. So I can't remember who I started with last time.
I'll start, Colin.
Okay. So Barry, I guess it's you. Go for it.
Okay, so let's start at the kind of the big item we created, which was a subclass for Nightingale. Now, when I decided to join the campaign and was going to play a bard, I've always wanted to play a bard that the story of their school was this thing of this school has been around for, eons, manipulating kings and queens and really getting into the politics of the world that we're playing in. So I worked with Colin to create the Penumbra Bard College. And, we took it very simple and don't feel that creating subclasses is this thing that's really hard to do. We looked at the classes that already existed and said, I like this element here. So we took that from one class and took another section and just kind of mixed and matched till we found something that really kind of resonated with what I envisioned the Penumbra Bards to be. So that's how we created the subclass for Nightingale. And, I'm thrilled with it. I don't feel it's overpowered. Again, all of the things we've kind of brought into our game are there to support backstory or drive story. They're not just there to help create ultra powerful characters. We don't play a campaign where we play superheroes. We just try to play heroes. We're not always trying to build the most powerful characters. So, in general, I don't think Colin as a DM, you got to worry about us as a group overusing magic to throw the game's balance off or anything like that. I think half the time you're wondering why we carry all this stuff around and barely bring it up, right?
Ballast. Clearly, It's all just ballast.
I got to keep encumbrance up.
Yeah. So on the topic of subclasses, Douglin has Oath of the Protector.
Yes.
Talk about that one.
A little bit different than Barry. This was something that came about after we started, and similar to Lafferty, which I'll get into in a little bit. But with Douglin, you sort of start out, well, of course, you don't get your oath until 3rd level, but it wasn't fleshed out right away. And as the story progressed, as Douglin progressed, if you will, and how the story started coming, it just felt like none of the oaths fit him. And I think that's the biggest and most exciting thing about making a homebrew item, whether it's a magic item or in this case a subclass, is that you're creating your character. This is all part of rolling the dice and his attributes and his personality and all that stuff. So similar though to what Barry said, we did pick from other oaths, so with Douglin, we didn't create anything new as far as the powers that he received. We picked a spell maybe from another list. We picked channel divinity from one oath and another. So it was all, standard, if you will, but put together in a way that created the Oath of the Protector. Douglin is very much that type of character. He is there to defend. He's not
the
there.
mother hen of the group.
He is the mother hen of the group, and so we wanted to develop something that would make it him, right? That this was as much a part of who he is. And now we've sort of created the Oath of Protector in this world. He is unique. It is not yet an oath that other paladins have because he has been chosen, if you will. So that was the really fun part of it is I looked at it again as an extension of Douglin and how did that best fit in creating him and developing him as a character.
Yeah, and I like what you sort of touched on there, Egan, where so when you started off Douglin, we hadn't considered Oath of the Protector at all. I mean, we knew you get to 3rd level, you're gonna pick your oath as you always do with a paladin character, but as Douglin developed, and pulling from his backstory, as we got to the point where he was going to get his oath, none of them really fit the story the way we wanted it to, right? And
Right.
So that's where we started having the conversation. Well, then let's just build an oath that works for that particular.
Well, you bring
Douglin's-
something up. Oh, I'm sorry, real quick, but in regards to Douglin, if you guys go back and watch the first couple of episodes, there's a very different Douglin. Douglin was actually going to be an Oath of Vengeance. Based on his story, he lost his family, and he was going to have sort of a driven focus to wreak revenge on those that did him wrong, but it didn't fit. I was uncomfortable playing him that way. It didn't feel natural. Quite frankly, it wasn't fun. And so once we found that avenue, it just clicked, and it just made everything more natural. I think more fun. I think he's been a much more dynamic character than this just soul-driven, Oath of Vengeance paladin. So it was a great switch, and I think one that was very important for his character.
If I'm not mistaken, Douglin's Oath of the Protector was the first homebrew thing we added to the campaign.
It was.
I think,
That was
it
like
was
episode 3 or 4, or session 3 or 4. Yeah, it was pretty early on that. Well, I mean, you progressed up to 3rd level, right? And
Yeah.
that's where we. Yeah. Barry, what do you want to talk about next?
Well, I think the next thing I'll move to, I haven't really spoke about Landis. Now, I found a subclass for Landis, the Order of the Scribe. I really like that. I've always wanted to play a wizard that's very spell oriented, and that class, it just checked all the boxes for me. So I didn't have to do anything special in a subclass, but what I decided to do with Landis was look for homebrew spells. Now, I thought about creating a few, and I'm working on a few of my own, but I went to a couple really fantastic resources out there. Fandom, Totally Wiki. I found a massive spell list there where I found Black Pillar by the Compendium of Forgotten Spells. I found Wall of Paper on that website, which is from Meow Magic. And then D&D Beyond also is a really great resource for homebrew spells. I kind of stumbled on that one too. I didn't know that section was even there. D&D Beyond is an amazing resource for everybody. Not a plug, but if you want to sponsor us, go right ahead. I found Origami on D&D Beyond, which is, I tried to bring in spells again that really emphasize the type of character that Landis is. He's a bookworm, repeatedly he falls asleep buried under his arcane books, studying magic, learning to manipulate it. So I picked the Wall of Paper. That's not a powerful spell, but he's a bookworm. So you can just imagine him in the middle of combat, ripping a few pages out of his book, tossing them out, and creating a wall of paper. It just fit the character. So again, bringing in a little bit of homebrew to help amplify your characters it's what it's all about. It's not a power game. You can't win D&D no matter how hard you try. The DM can always one up you. So forget about that. it's just about building depth to that character and just making it a fun, cool experience. And so, yeah, with Landis, I added some spells, and me and Colin talked about it, and he okayed them. So the balance of power didn't get too shifted. And then the other thing was a magic item that Colin actually gave Landis. And this is really tied to his backstory. Landis's backstory has a lot to do about his grandfather, who was very influential on him taking off and joining the Dooms. And it really devastated Landis and, ruined his family's name. And he's always trying to, bring that name out of the dirt and dust. And Colin gave me a magic item called Words Yet Spoken. And it was a gift, an inheritance from his grandfather. And that is a connection he has to his grandfather. And we use it for plot points. And he's now in communication with his grandfather. So that was really to help bring Landis's backstory to the forefront so that it's staying constant and relevant in the game no matter where we go. I've got that connection to that backstory. So that was a really great addition.
Yeah, I like what we've been able to do with that book so far, and I mean we're just starting really.
Yeah.
As a communication tool right now, but lots of other possibilities in there. Let's talk about Lafferty and his very new edition.
Yes. So
Actually,
with
several
Lafferty,
new editions.
yes. So with Lafferty, it was a little bit different than Douglin in that it was something that we in essence created. Again, we still pulled from similar level powers, but these were outside of the sorcerer class. So we basically created a Void Sorcerer. The Void is very much part of our storyline. There's a lot going on there. It's mysterious. It's just starting to kind of show itself, but there's still quite a bit to go. And I was thinking that Lafferty it needed something else. I don't want to say more in the sense of I enjoyed playing him as an artificer, but at the end of the day, if you watch the episodes, he is struggling with making an impact of protecting his people. He feels that he's let them down. He has not so much a mentor, but a hero of his that he thinks he might be responsible for banishing him to the void. And so through some of the game chat, he took something in essence to become a Void Sorcerer. And what we did is we, again, put together spells similar to other sorcerer subclasses, but then we flavored some of the powers. Like a first level, we called it Displacement of the Void. In essence, it's a displacer cloak. And what we tried to do with the Void Sorcerer is kind of have everything related to time and space manipulation, displacement, if you will. You're there, but you're not there. And so when going through sort of the spell lists and powers, I tried to relate those all to that. An unseen servant, a misty step, which we're calling void step. So it was a lot of fun. I will tell you that. And I think, again, it's going to open up a lot of storylines and sort of take more steps for Lafferty to become less one-dimensional, artificer, make me a magic item type of thing. There's something there that needs to be explored. And I think the other PCs are going to be a little surprised on certain things, but that's the fun of all of it.
Yeah, but I mean that's exactly what we're talking about here. I mean, it's these things are really creating openings for us to flavor the story even more, right? Because you can create, you want the subclass that's super powerful or whatever. So you approach your DM, I want the ultimate killer, mega smasher. And for me, my first question, if a player came to me, I would just say to them, how does this add to the story?
Yeah.
Right? Because I want to see you bring things in that are going to give us an opportunity to maybe swing into another sub storyline that's adding to the overall story. You know, I'm not a big fan, and this is just a personal preference, and I think we're all on the same page here. Not a big fan of just introducing elements for the sake of the element. You know, I really want to see them add to the story that we're telling together. And just a couple of things here. You know, some of the considerations that I have when we're creating these homebrew things. The first big thing for me, you know, and I've always talked to you guys about this, is we have to be really careful that it's not overpowered.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's nothing worse than having to nerf something after the player has gotten used to using it. Right? It's like, oh God, you know what? That's gotten really powerful, but now it only does half what it used to do. And, you know, if it started out only doing half what it, you know, you would be fine with that. But when you get used to it doing something and then you have to nerf it in some way, it's like, that's a bit of a kick in the teeth, right? So I always encourage you guys, use some existing game element as your framework.
Yeah.
Because if it sort of generally matches something that exists out there already, I can be fairly confident that it's not going to be overpowered, right? So that framework really helps us. Whenever possible, when you're building these game elements, take inspiration out of the character backstories, because then it just gives you fantastic new tools in your story to weave in the characters' backstories, right? In almost, you know, look, I'm looking at the list here, easily half or more of the items really draw from the character backstories, right? Because it can be difficult as a DM sometimes to find hooks to pull the character's backstory in. And these you know, these homebrewed game elements really make that much easier. As a DM, when you're creating homebrewed elements, players don't need to know everything about them. You know, there can be all you may know the stuff I'm giving you now, but there could be a laundry list of stuff you don't know about these game elements yet, right? And you just sort of seed that in when it makes the right.
What are you saying, Colin?
Yeah. What's
nothing.
up with that?
Yeah. And my final little point about that stuff from the DM standpoint is, don't feel like any of these creations are static. You know, if it's not working the way that you and the player hoped, change it.
Yeah.
You know, like, these things have to work for us, not the other way around. So, you know, we put something together, it seemed right, but essentially when we play test it, we're like, dang, this is just not working the way we thought it would. Let's remold it a little bit, right? There's nothing to say you can't adjust it to get the mileage you're looking for from that particular game element, right? And we Valamore's whip would be a perfect example, right? That's an item that Nightingale got that we went one direction with. We decided that just wasn't, or I guess you decided, Barry, that just wasn't achieving what you wanted out of it. So we just dialed it all back. You know, Valamore's whip is still there, and it still has story around it that you're learning and exploring. But it was just like, hey, this just doesn't work, so let's change it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you took a level of sorcery, and I'm like, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm like, good. Perfect. Let's dial it back, take what you want, right?
Yeah, indeed.
So looking at the rest of our...
Sorry,
Go
Colin.
ahead.
You can also sort of point to Lafferty with that is, and this kind of goes to homebrewing some items. With the Artificer, full disclosure, it's a very tough class, especially the Alchemist to play. It's a lot of work. It really is. And we've talked about downtime. I mean, it's almost a must for an Artificer Alchemist to have downtime built into any campaign for them to be truly effective. We have tried, and they're still there, to kind of create sort of quick and dirty, what we would call spell bombs, right? That it would be sort of a lesser version of a spell, not long, doesn't last as long, not nearly as effective, but doesn't take up a spell slot, something that can be applied without concentration. They're still there, but it's really difficult to make those effective, if you will. So that's another example of, we tried something, and again, it's still there, but not as a focus now. It's just sort of another, I guess, weapon in the arsenal of Lafferty. But again, another thing that maybe didn't work out exactly how we wanted, but it was fun trying. It was a lot of fun trying. So
I want to raise a point that just make sure that our audience out there, especially those people who are new to Dungeons and Dragons, perhaps you're a first-time DM, both Colin and Egan mentioned this, is even just taking a spell like Misty Step and renaming it something that sounds different, the Void Step. Now you've created an element of customization, so your player character feels cooler than they normally would. Like, I've got a custom spell. Sure, it does the same thing as Misty Step, but you flavored it a little, and that it gives that player character an opportunity to role play that when they cast it. Instead of just vanishing in a mist and coming up in a mist, they seem to step through a little void portal and come out somewhere else. Same spell, different name, a little bit of flavor thrown in for RP value. Doesn't change the spell, but creates a whole new experience for both the player and the DM.
Barry, I got to tell you, you hit the nail on the head, and I want to bring up one in particular. Colin and I really love this one. So if those of you want to look up the Shadow Soul background for Sorcerer, Summon Ill Omen. So we took that, and basically you would normally have a wolf that is just, it's got one track mind. It's just going to go straight to your prey and do whatever it can. There are void monsters that we've seen that are terrifying. And so we've now called it Summon the Void. So it's basically the same model, but instead of a dire wolf, it is now going to be these
Void hunters.
Void hunters. Yeah. So yeah, Barry, you nailed it. And it's cool. It's just
an easy way to add customization,
all we had to really do there was match up the stat block for the Void Hunter so it was comparable to what you got from the Dire Wolf. And again, that was the easy way to keep it from being overpowered. From from thematically speaking in the game, all I had to say was, because Void Hunters in the Void are much more powerful than Void Hunters are in the material plane, and that's just because they're out of their element.
Right.
Yep. So in the Void Hunters are much more powerful than they are when they appear for Lafferty. But that's easy to explain because it's a whole different plane of existence, right? So so that was actually quite fun to put together.
Oh yeah, can't wait till I get to that level and summon that guy.
Barry, why don't you just touch on Valamore's wit just a little bit, sort of because I think the progression there is, it's just a good example of being able to back up and regroup.
So to wrap up the progression of Nightingale, before I had hammered down the Penumbra Bards, I wanted Nightingale to have a little bit of something else. So I took a level of Warlock, and here now I'm triple classing, which is a sentence for a character that has no real direction and whatever. So in doing that, I was after a weapon, my packed weapon, and I want it to be unique. You know, I'm a bard, I'm a thief, so you know I'm not going to be swinging a great sword or anything. And nobody ever uses whips because, unfortunately, in Dungeons and Dragons, whips suck really bad. So I was like, Colin, like, I want to use a whip. I think it's a really neat weapon that, you know, has lots of possible neat things. So we sat together and I threw out some ideas to Colin, which is basically I give him my wish list and he pares it down because I have a bad, I can't pare it down without thinking I'm losing something. I want all the things. But, you know, so we created a weapon that, you know, has great power in regards of a magic weapon, but it's come with some caveats that kind of balance that out. You know, in getting Valamore's whip, Nightingale had to create kind of like a pack, so we kind of kept that element to it. It's not a pack that gives me warlock abilities. It's more of a pack in which I now have a relationship with Valamore. He's seen things in my past that he kind of is like, you know, you deserve justice because of what's happened to you, and that's what Valamore was kind of all about. So we, you know, we created history for our world of Emathan, which we're, you know, it's a fun, exciting thing we're creating, but it's now created this element that really emphasized the side of my backstory, which was, you know, he got wronged and basically had to abandon his life, to now that I've got this weapon that's going to drive me back into that backstory to help avenge it. So, you know, the simple introduction of this one item, which I wanted, Colin took it, added these other elements to balance the power, but in turn created this awesome weapon that's going to help drive my story, which I think we're kind of beginning to introduce into the game as we get play, and it's starting to come more and more into the forefront. And yeah, it was just a really fun experience. Like you said, it started off being a warlock weapon, but I didn't want to have that subclass anymore. I think I had it. We didn't even play I think we played one session and I didn't even, you know, I think I cast. And if you ever look back, I think I shot one of the bolts and that was it. That's the extent of my warlock. And then it was just like, I just don't like it. I don't like having triple classes.
You took some shrooms and, you know,
yeah,
had a weird
I just
day.
tripped out. I just tripped out. Yeah. So yeah, it's just a really interesting thing that, like you say, we started off with one direction and it didn't work out and I wasn't happy with it. So we just modified it and changed it and tweaked it a little bit. And, you know, at the end of the day, the things you create, like you said, Colin, don't have to remain the way they are. If you're not happy with the way your custom thing has come out, change it. You made it. Change it to where you're happy and keep playing. At the end of the day, it's all about having a great day and enjoying what you're playing. No character should be a burden to play. You should never play a character you're not happy with. And
100%.
you know, it's just making sure you're truthful with yourself with what you want to play and letting the DM know if something's not working out. And it's pretty easy to change stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're getting close to the end here. Egan, any last thoughts around our topic?
Yeah, just a quick jump back to Dublin. First of all, shout out to D&D Wiki. We found a really cool feat for Dublin. If you guys watch our episodes, you know that Dublin has a habit of falling down unconscious often. And so we had a lot of downtime. And downtime is not just for the artificer in your campaign. Basically, Dublin spent a lot of this time training. And so to kind of reward that, we found a great feat that also, again, fits his style. It's called Great Weapon Defense. You have to have a, you know, pole arm or great weapon, and basically it increases your defense, but it nerfs your offense, which is perfect for Dublin. So again, it's not, downtime is not just for the artificer, but it was a fun way for us to sort of, you know, use that time to create something unique for Dublin.
Yep. Barry, final thoughts?
I'm just going to throw this out there for all of us here. if anyone who watches, Tavern Talks, hearing us talk about these subclasses, I think it would be really great if we shared them in the Adventures of Emathan wiki that we've created.
Absolutely.
So I think we'll include that link, somewhere in the many bars and things we have below us. And yeah, if you guys are interested in, playing these subclasses yourself, just give us credit for the stuff we've created and enjoy it, man. It's always fun to share stuff with people. It's the D&D community is always great for sharing. As we said, we've borrowed from other people, and keep creativity free and fun for everybody. And this game will only get better and better.
Yeah. So, my final thoughts. I absolutely love homebrewed game elements, because they just help us build onto the story so much, right? I mean, a bard that belongs to a college that's from his backstory, that's awesome. A sorcerer whose power is pulled from a new plane that's been introduced in our campaign. I mean, just awesome ways to build it. That sort of stuff. It really anchors the characters to the world, and just helps add so much to the story, right? And we're definitely seeing it there. So that's a wrap for episode 7 of Roll by Roll's Tavern Talk. We hope that you've enjoyed tonight's topic. Tavern Talks occurred the Thursday after each of our Saturday night adventures in Emathan sessions. So our next session is scheduled for not
October
this
15th.
Saturday. Thank you, October 15th. Not this Saturday, but next Saturday. So for those of you that are watching on YouTube, please support us by making sure to like our videos and subscribe to the channel. Hit that little bell icon so you'll be alerted when the next session occurs. So to end the episode, as we always do, we'll offer a cheers. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining us in the tavern, and we hope that you can join us next time. Bye for now.
See ya.